Hey guys, my name's Paul. Today we're going to be talking to Peter Hooke. Peter is all the way from Melbourne, Australia. Welcome, Peter. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hello, Paul. Thank you for having me today. Yes, my name's Peter. I'm a disability advocate and podcaster here in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Peter, you have cerebral palsy. This is a name for a group of lifelong conditions that affects movement and coordination.
Yes.
Can you just tell us a little bit about that, please?
Sure. Cerebral palsy affects many people in different ways, but the way it has presented in me is the fact that I can't stand, transfer, or walk independently, and I use an electric wheelchair every day of my life. I have hoisting systems that allow me to get in and out of bed, use the shower, use the toilet, but I'm very, very independent. I've been very lucky with the way my disability has enabled me to live in an independent life, and it's a lifelong condition that's affected me since birth. The reason why it happened was because I didn't get enough oxygen at birth. Those few seconds have resulted in my lifelong disability.
How did that impact you in kind of when you were younger? I mean, in terms of how, your parents dealt with that.
I've never felt different, never been told that my disability was a negative thing. It was just, the way I was brought up, it was an added element. Yes, it caused some challenges, but they just considered me, Peter, first before they considered the disability.
What were your first sort of memories of, I don't know, finding out about yourself and kind of discovering what you could do, what you couldn't do, and just some of those challenges?
As far as registering that I was different, oh, look, to be honest, I don't really consider myself different even today. I sort of just consider myself as someone that needs a mobility aid and something to be adapted, but I've never really considered myself to be different.
I think that if you have a visible, disability, that can impact an invisible disability, right? In the sense that it can affect your mental state.
Don't get me wrong, of course it was challenging. There's always periods, particularly when I was very, very sick, you're constantly in pain. You're on pain medication that's making you hallucinate. It was full on, but I've always been pretty determined to see the other side, because I think, well, if it's really bad at the moment, it's just not the end yet.
Peter, do you think that by having loving parents around you, that really helped you?
It's fundamental. I cannot overstate how important my parents have been, that they've been able to form me into the person that I am today, because both of them have very, very positive outlooks on life. They are very no nonsense and very to the point, and I just basically got on with it.
What is a typical day like for you?
Because I do everything myself with little support, which is my choice, I should definitely highlight that. It takes me about 2 hours to get up and get ready and be at my desk, if not a little bit longer. So once I'm organized, I eat breakfast, and then I do what I love to do, which is speaking into a microphone, just like we are now, Paul. And I produce my own podcast, and I do disability advocacy as well.
Tell me about that, please.
Yeah, it's called the I Can't Stand podcast. It's with Nova Entertainment, which is a radio station here in Melbourne. Basically, it came from the idea that people really don't know and understand what it's like to live with a disability. So every week I answer a question from my audience, and I'll answer any question that they have about what it's like to live with a disability, because I only have to go around and get a coffee and somebody will ask me a question. And there's got to be a more efficient way to educate the public. And this is how I've chosen to do it.
Fantastic, and we'll put your all the details for this in this podcast as well. We'll put them in the notes.
I think it's important for people to understand that people with disabilities are just like them, and we have nuanced individual personalities, and we're all different.
What are people's reactions to you when they see you out?
Mainly, I get the like pity tilt of the head, like, oh, what's wrong with you? What happened? That sort of questions, which are always challenging to sort of answer, because to me, I know something happened, but I can't remember it happening. So for me, nothing is wrong. I'm just being myself, being Peter.
What needs to change in terms of how your conditions are perceived?
My parents got sat down and said, Peter will never be able to write her a name. Like, she will not be capable of doing anything academic. Just like a very sweeping statement that it could have defined my life.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, I have the parents that I have, and I have 2 degrees, including a master's degree. So it's those, that's at the very start. If parents are told that their children have limited abilities or capabilities, that can really impact their lives going forward. I think if a doctor could say to parents, yes, this is your child and this is the diagnosis and these are all the wide-ranging how it could present in them, but please remember that they are your child first. They are not their disability first, and them being your child means that they have all your attributes and abilities as well. So don't give up on your child before they've even had a chance to really show you who they are.
What are your hopes for the future?
I hope that there's a greater level of equality for people with disabilities throughout the world. And that's a really, really big statement with lots of underlying things that define what equality is. But things like employment, things like education, things like accessibility, things like discrimination, things like housing, things like transport. There's lots of areas that determine equality.
How did you learn about the sunflower?
So I learned about the sunflower via social media. I follow a great person. Their name is on social media is Disabled Eliza, and they have really advocated for the sunflower. So that's where I found you guys.
Do you use one?
Particularly if I needed to highlight to someone that I suffer with fatigue, or if I was really suffering with pain that day, particularly in large environments, like, not that they're really happening at the moment, but like corporate events, things like that. So I don't have to fully explain maybe why I need to take an extra breath, or why I'm just sort of taking a minute.
Do you feel that the sunflower is needed in society?
Absolutely. I think it's a fantastic initiative, because there are so many people that do have hidden disabilities. And I know from hearing from other people with that experience that there's so much labor to educating what it is like to have a disability. So it's such an easy thing to just pop on, and then people that need education can just look and think, okay, I know what to do.
Do you have any advice or coping mechanisms that you've used, along the way, and can you share them?
I mean, there's very basic things like making sure that you don't overdo it. Make sure you manage fatigue. For me, fatigue management is very important. Making sure I get enough sleep. Making sure I educate people around me on, how I can best be helped. so I don't always have to do things independently. Like, for example, just pulling a chair away from the table is really helpful for me and makes me feel like people understand my disability. Positivity has been the key for me in my life.
If you're wearing the sunflower, what is the reaction you'd like from somebody?
For me, I would love someone to walk up and go, "Oh, hey, good for you for wearing the sunflower. It's such a great initiative." But I know for some people, particularly with autism, that could be the opposite to the reason why they're actually wearing the lanyard. So possibly just a lovely smile would be good.
If you could ask for one thing as a result of the conversation today and sharing your personal story, what would it be?
I believe that people should always try and set their own goals according to who they are and not what their disability or their diagnosis tells them that they should do. Don't let anybody else define you. You're the only one that can define yourself.
Peter, it's been a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you ever so much for your time.
Paul, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for having me.